everyone, a very good afternoon to you, and welcome to this wonderful region of Miami, here in the USA, as we kick off our Ferrari Challenge North America season for 2023. Here we are at Homestead-Miami Speedway, maybe 45 minutes from central Miami, and what a brilliant track this is. A combination of really fast parts and very technical infield section as well. And as you would expect, when it comes to the Ferrari Challenge, the paddock is made a very exciting place to be. Really taking ownership of Homestead-Miami Speedway and coloring it red for our race weekend number one. And there you can see just one of the buildings here in Homestead-Miami that houses our wonderful hospitality, where we've enjoyed a very sumptuous lunch, it has to be said. So, and there you can see just one of the lakes that was created, if you will, and all the aggregate that came out of the hole that was dug to create the lake made some of the banking here at Homestead-Miami. This is where we are then, down on that lovely part of Florida, where the sun is shining beautifully and has done all weekend long. The temperatures have been glorious, with hardly a cloud in the sky today, which is not necessarily everything that the drivers would want in terms of getting the best out of their cars and the tires when it comes to the race. But from here we head off to Texas and the Circuit of the Americas for the second round. Then it's off to Road Atlanta in the middle of May. Montreal in Canada, of course, as we support the F1 Grand Prix. That's our round 4. Round 5 is Sonoma in California. And then in Road America at the beginning of September, before all roads lead to Tuscany in Italy for the finale Mondiale event in Mugello. That comes right at the end of October, when I can confidently predict the temperatures will be somewhat different to those that we're enjoying today. Here is the track then. 2.2 miles, 3.5 kilometers, dependent upon your measurement preference. 15 turns, 11 left, and 4 right-handers. And the inner parts of the circuit are really quite challenging and technical, and particularly turns number 2 and 3 provide something of a pinch point from the very start of the race, and well worth keeping your eye on as the cars make their way through that little funnel, as it were, which is turn 2 and 3. And here we can see the track in all its glory, and the temperature in all its glory is 30 degrees, and the track temperature, the highest I think that we've had thus far this weekend, and that's 33 degrees. Humidity of 42%, and very little fluttering wind to cool us at 11 kilometers per hour. So let's take a look then, good and proper, at this fantastic place with Dylan Medler, who's going to give us a track lap of Homestead-Miami.
Hi, my name is Dylan Medler, driver number 15 for the Collection Ferrari of Miami, and I'm going to take you for a lap around Homestead-Miami Speedway.
So here we're on the front straight of Homestead-Miami Speedway, going up the 6th gear, looking for a turn-in point for turn 1. You turn in flat, you go to the brakes before the change of pavement. You want to carry speed through turn 2, all the way track out, and then you want to brake for 3, and you want to sacrifice this corner so you get a good shot for turn 4. You get into the banking early to settle the car, and then you're flat out here. This straightaway, you go up to 6th gear, and you start looking for your braking marks around 300. You go down to 3rd gear, and you short shift to 4th. You use as much track as possible to open the corner for turn 7. You do a light breathe of the throttle and then back on. So now we're on the straightaway. You go up to 6th gear, you look around, see there's cars coming, and you brake at the 2, down to 3rd gear. You square off this corner to get a good shot off. There you go. So then now you're on the back straight. You're going to go up to 6th gear here, and now you're already looking for your turn-in point for turn 10. So you're going to get ready to do a light breathe of the brakes, and then back on throttle at the apex to settle the car. And you brake. You try to carry as much speed through turn 11, but sometimes you counter oversteer. And then here's turn 12, where you sacrifice it to get a good shot into 13. And you want to get on the banking as quick as possible so you don't start scrubbing speed. And then once you're on it, you get as close to the wall to set up for turn 1. And that's a lap around Homestead-Miami Speedway.
Thanks so much, Dylan Medler, taking us for a high-speed lap of the Homestead-Miami Speedway. It's not only my voice that will grace our broadcast this afternoon, but delighted to once again be teamed up with Shay Adam, who's down there in the pit lane.
And I know that you know what the temperature is like, Dave, having chewed your way through the chains that were holding you into the booth during that little bit of a lunch break. It is warm down here, but that means that the advantage goes towards people who call Miami home. We just got a lap with Dylan Medler, a student at the University of Miami, class of 2026. So, Dylan, we'll save you for the next race. But for the Coppa Shell contenders, we've got a few drivers who do now call Miami-Dade County home, including a man I spoke with earlier in the week, Mr. Ray Acosta. Well, you burst onto the scene last year, 2 fast laps in your first weekend, 5 podiums and a win, but never raced at Homestead. What's it like to race at home?
It's a great feeling to be here, especially with the home crowd, my family, my friends. The track is amazing. It's a little bit on tear on the tires, but it's great. I love it. I love the feeling. It's nice and warm here. It's an experience that's unbelievable, let me tell you.
Last year, 4th in the championship, stepping up to the next class. Intimidating or exciting?
It's going to be a challenge. It means a lot, though. I think it'll be a great race, both Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be competitive. I'm in a new class, like you said. There's a lot of great talent in both classes, in all classes, really. So I'm just going to be battling out there.
Thank you, Ray Acosta, who will be going from P11 on the grid. So work to do for Ray Acosta, but don't bet against him. And we can see as we are on board with Ray Acosta right now. Great to catch up with him and talk to him. And, of course, having the advantage of local support all the way through the race to come. And the racing yesterday was very, very dramatic. Let's take a recap and a look at the highlights of yesterday's racing. Homestead-Miami. What a place to start the 2023 season for the Ferrari Challenge North America. The excitement and anticipation built, ready for the flag to be waved as the green flag flies. Then what a start it was going to be. Keep your eyes here as everyone tries to keep their cool. The first set of corners, of course, not everyone's tyres are up to temperature, and therefore some moves were a bit bold and ambitious perhaps. And losing out there was Jason McCarthy, but Jason McCarthy was on something of a mission to come back, and come back he certainly would. However, it was Roberto Perina who did well right at the start. There was also a super battle going on with Trofeo Pirelli-Am and Dave Musial and Tony Davis, who had been elevated by 2 categories for this year and was having a really, really good battle. There was lots of action going on and various bits of mirrors going flying as well. But Roberto Perina absolutely nailed it and took the checkered flag for Trofeo Pirelli, and it would be Mark Musso that would take success and victory for Trofeo Pirelli-Am as he headed towards the checkered flag. So a great race from our Trofeo Pirelli drivers. And then, of course, it was the turn of Coppa Shell to take to the track, and a very big grid of cars assembling ready for their race. And you could see very, very early on that lots of people were eager to go, including Cameron Root. And again, whilst the first corners were perhaps not quite so frantic as in Trofeo Pirelli, Jan Bernier was able to take advantage to put himself up into P2, as you can see here. However, there was lots going on, and Dan Cornish and Lisa Clark in particular were having a super battle. They're great friends off the track, and Cameron Root eventually got the better of Jan Bernier. And as you can see, it was a textbook overtake through that left-hand turn. So Lisa Clark and Dan Cornish resumed their spectacular battle as well. Who would it be that would be victorious? Well, this move from Lisa Clark was absolutely precision perfect. The 125 car was in a different class. It was all about the orange and yellow cars here. Regrettably, the race would finish under the yellow flag and behind the safety car, but it meant nothing because all the drivers celebrating the success, including Lisa Clark, who took the win in Coppa Shell and taking the Coppa Shell win with a fine showing with Surreal Choxy. All the drivers celebrated on the podium. It was loud, proud, and very enjoyable.
Can't imagine a better way to kick off the 2023 season than the racing we were treated to yesterday in both of the categories that we had, Trofeo Pirelli and Coppa Shell, but it was Coppa Shell that left more drivers wanting just a little bit more out of the race. no one more so than our pole sitter, Frank Szczesniak. Frank, who's coming into the series again this year, finished 6th in yesterday's race, felt as if he had a little bit more on the table left to give, came out in qualifying, and certainly delivered as far as that's concerned. But it was the guy who finished 2nd in yesterday's race, Cameron Root, newcomer to the series, who surprised everyone, Dave and myself, I'm going to put in that big category, because he came into the series with very little experience and was running up at the front, contending for the win the entirety of the race. We've got a lot of newcomers in Ferrari Challenge this year. Another one of them is William Naranjo. Let's get to know him a little bit better.
I started in 2017 when I just bought my first Ferrari, and I started doing the Corso Pirolas in Italy. I love Italy because the Italian love Ferrari, and I decided, okay, let's go to do all the courses there. And I've been already in 9 different Corsos Pilotas. Like every time they have one new one, I'll be there for sure. I'm originally from Colombia, but I moved to Miami like 20 years ago. And with the dealership, they invited us to come to Ferrari Challenge, to the owner lab and all of that. And I start okay, maybe I can do this. And I start talking with people, talking with coaches, the teams, doing the courses. And now I'm here. I don't know what is going to happen, but it's excited. Have my family here, all the people who work with me here, look in the race, and show them what is my passion, what is my hobby, and it's a new challenge for me. And I believe I plan to be here for a long time.
William Naranjo, lovely to hear from him. One to keep an eye on this afternoon, going from P9 on the grid for the collection. So, as Shay said, getting to know our drivers just a little bit better is what we try to do in every program that we'll be bringing you during the course of this wonderful 2023 season. And there you can see the 177 car of David Voronin that is that lovely blue and red. And then just coming into the picture there is the 176 car of Lance Corley, Ferrari of Atlanta, finished in P5 yesterday, and Lance Corley going from P5 on the grid for today's race. Another driver worthy of watching, I would suggest, during the course of this afternoon. Yesterday's victor was Cyril Choksi. He goes from P3 on the grid for Shell. And bear in mind, we have the Shell and the Shell Am drivers all mixed up on the grid. They are racing in separate categories, but they are, of course, all together out there on the grid. So, Shay Adam, then, a fantastic race in prospect. Back to you.
For sure. And considering what we saw yesterday, Dave, as far as qualifying led into the race, it was dominance from both of our pole sitters. Even though the race ended under a caution, the times that were being set by both Cyril Choksi and our Coppa Shell Am pole sitter for yesterday and today, which was Lisa Clark, very, very impressive indeed. It let us know that the people out front deserve to be out front because of those purple lap times that we were seeing from both of the respective eventual victors. Today, as I mentioned, once again, Lisa Clark starting in the first position, but Dan Cornish, the man who raced her pretty hard to the end of the race, is starting second, and Dan is her biggest competition. Last year, finishing one place behind her in the Coppa Shell Am category. This year, looking to try and fight her for the championship. It's Darren Bernstein who's starting third in class in car number 169. Yesterday was his best finish in that category. Last year, his best finish was only a 7th. So very good progress that we're seeing from Darren Bernstein. And also another guy to keep an eye on. I know I keep mentioning these Miami natives, but we've got Jeffrey Nunberg on the grid, and Miami is a place that he called home for a very long time, living out in the Kendall region, so not terribly far from here. Jeff last year had a best place finish of 4th in category. He finished 10th in the Coppa Shell Am Championship ultimately. But let's see if maybe, just maybe, we can get Jeff Nunberg onto the podium today.
Well, one never knows, and very much looking forward to the race to come. And there you can see the preparation is ongoing down there in the pit lane. It's always a very, very busy place and very colourful place as well. And some photos going on there behind the Richard Mills safety car of some of the top team from Corsa Clienti. And there you can see right in the middle of your picture is the Pirelli Ferrari Challenge Motorsport manager Lucio Vigani, we'll be seeing on the podium a little bit later on this afternoon. And Lucio is a really great and passionate enthusiast when it comes to everything to do with racing. And, of course, the Pirelli tyres adorn these wonderful 4A Challenge Evo cars when it comes to the Ferrari Challenge. You can see the final stages of preparation going on for the Lisa Clark car, a 127 car, and just ahead of that is that of Robert Williams, and then Thor Haugen as well. All the cars lined up there on in the pit lane, ready to do battle for their second race of the weekend, this opening weekend for the Ferrari Challenge for 2023. What a fantastic season we have in prospect, with some very, very different circuits to enjoy across the course of the season. There's the 122 car of Frank Szczesniak then, who is going from pole position for Ferrari of Tampa Bay, and there the blind across the windscreen to just try and dissipate some of the heat that is coming down here. Every driver, of course, and there you can see that's also the case for the Cameron Root team, as Cameron is being looked after and trying to reduce the temperature as much as possible ahead of the start of the race, because it's going to be red hot. You can bet your bottom dollar. Going to be really, really good. So much looking forward to this Coppa Shell race to come. Always a sprint race, always a rolling start with the Ferrari Challenge. 30 minutes of racing to come. And let's go right now back down to the very, very hot seat in the pit lane with Shea Adam.
And as soon as you said that, the cloud cover came. All right, my favorite part of the weekend. Drivers, start your Ferrari engines.
And that is the cue for the power plants of these 4A Challenge Evos to light up then. It's typical, as Shay said, I always bring the cloud with me. Funny that. So Szczesniak going for from pole position for the Shell drivers. Lisa Clark with a very, very good qualifying going from pole position for the Shell AM drivers. Going to be a very, very exciting race of that in prospect. Tantalizing as it may be, and of course those first sequence of turns on the infield going to be very, very keen to watch those. We of course will be bringing you all the action, all the highs and all the lows during the course of this 30-minute race to come from the Ferrari Challenge. Coppa Shell, and Coppa Shell AM. So the cars are about to set off behind the Richard Mills safety car then on their installation lap, and there you can see, and the safety car will peel off into the pit lane at the end of this, and that will allow the drivers to grid up side by side in formation, ready for the start of what will be a terrific Coppa Shell race. We are ready for the race start. We will bring you the grid in full. And, of course, the grid is formed from the results from qualifying, which sees Frank Szczesniak going from pole position alongside one to watch, Cameron Root for Ron Tonkin Gran Turismo. Cyril Choksi, yesterday's winner, Row 2 with Jan Vernier. They are P3 and P4. Then it's Lance Corley and Bruce Cleveland going from P5 and P6. Then it is David Voronin and Dalton going on P7 and P8. Naranjo and Viscup are P9 and P10. So they occupy row 5 ahead of Acosta and Looney. And they are P11 and P12, completing the 6th row of our grid for this Coppa Shell race. Haugen and Lynn are on the 7th row. It's P13 and P14 with McWilliams and Montfort. Then row 8, it's P15 and P16. Pole sitter for Coppa Shell AM, Lisa Clark. Got Dan Cornish right alongside. That's going to be great fun with Darren Bernstein, a good quali, and Jeff Nunberg alongside. DiCarlo goes from P21 and Perescoia from P22, perhaps out of position. Goodwin and Walters then are P23 and P24. Of course, that will be row 12 then. Langberg in a T car and Camp alongside. They go P25 and P26, completing the 13 rows of Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo cars then, about to set off on their second 30-minute race of the weekend. We are in Homestead-Miami. And the cars then making their way on their formation lap right now. And here you can see as they rejoin the oval track here, come up onto the bank and carry so much speed before turning back in a race situation into the infield part of the track and picking up on those. Neil Langberg then, unfamiliar colours in the 153 car. As I said, he is running a T car. Hold on to your hats, because the cars are side by side now. We split the screen so we can show you the start in all its glory as we are ready to go racing. This is the Ferrari Challenge. Let's go. We get the greens and a great start from Cameron Root. Is he going to be able to see out Szczesniak going into turn number 1 and 2? Yes, he is. And Cyril Choksi also trying to take advantage. Wasn't quite able to do that. Jan Bernier looking lively as well. Now, the battle in Coppa is going to be between Cornish and Clark, and at the moment it looks like Clark has got the better of Dan Cornish. So, a great start from Cameron Root, who really made his intentions known right at the start of the race. He got a very, very good run towards the green flag, and he made P1 his own, relegating Szczesniak to P2. There is yesterday's winner, Cyril Choksi for Ferrari of Denver, who's P3. Jan Bernier is P4. Then it is Lance Corley in P5. So a little bit of dust pick and being kicked up by some of the cars. Bear in mind, it takes them about a lap to get the tyres up to temperature, despite the really, really warm temperatures that we have here. And the driver's very aware of that, and just a little bit cautious perhaps on the brakes early on. And after saying that, a great move there from Jeffrey Nunberg, as Jeffrey Nunberg dispatches the Roger Montfort car as he continues his quest to go forward. There was no setting back there. Jeff was absolutely on it and made that count. So brilliant overtake there, and all the cars then, including Robert McWilliams and everybody else. And as you can see now, Dan Cornish has done a very good job. There is Lisa Clark, you can see, and sure enough, Dan Cornish then has put himself ahead of Lisa Clark. Now, this happened in the race yesterday, but Lisa Clark did come back on Dan Cornish, so let's see how that plays out. So the order is Cameron Root from Szczesniak and Choksi in the Shell drivers, and then for the AM drivers it is Dan Cornish ahead of Lisa Clark. Then it is Louis Perescoia. Great start from Louis Perescoia. Now you can see, look at them threading their way through these cars, and Lisa Clark just being caught out there as Dan Cornish does manage to go through, getting past the 177 car of David Voronin. That lovely white, blue and red livery that we can see across his 488 Challenge Evo. Now, Cameron Root is like a thing possessed here, because he has built a margin already of 1.196 seconds for Ron Tonkin Gran Turismo. What a great job Cameron Root is doing. He's in this P1 position. Of course, he's got to hold on to that for the rest of the race, but having taken P2 yesterday, is absolutely determined to move one step further up the podium when it comes to those podium celebrations a little bit later on, but we've still got a full 27.5 minutes of this race. The battle for second position between Szczesniak, Choksi and Jan Bernier. Well, at the moment, a clean pair of heels is being shown by Szczesniak to the chasing Choksi and Bernier for the moment, but write nothing off, because anything can happen, particularly around these technical parts of the track where you have to scrub off so much speed and then rebuild the momentum and get back on it once again. Of course, the big beneficiary is Cameron Root, who's got a completely clear track ahead of him, and therefore he can do what we consider to be set quali laps after quali laps and try and build as much of a comfort margin between himself and his pursuers as he possibly can. Ray Acosta we're watching right now, and Ray Acosta then running in P9 at the moment, and we go on board with Ray Acosta, who is chasing down that John Viscup car. John Viscup currently running in P8, Ray Acosta running in P9 as we ride on board with Ray Acosta now. It was lovely to hear from him earlier on in our program in the warm-up to the race. And there you can actually see from a driver's eye perspective exactly what it's like, taking a little bit more curve than John Viscup did on the entry to and exit of that turn, and that perhaps has gained him just a precious few millimeters and maybe a precious little bit of momentum advantage. But who's going to be king of the late breakers here? And this is a very, very tight turn indeed. You take it wide, then really kiss it on the middle, and then you're trying to build speed all the time as you go out onto the back straight here at the Homestead-Miami Speedway. Absolutely wonderful. Look how close these cars get to that really unforgiving concrete wall, which can be assured it does not bend, does not move if you were to clatter against it. But these drivers are pinpoint accurate in where they put the car. Absolutely a joy to watch, a joy to behold, and throw in the cars through the chicane here. And watch for this, a really complete change of topography almost as the cars bounce across the bump and back out onto the start-finish straight before we head towards turn number 1 all over again. Now, we're watching our leader in Coppa here, which is Dan Cornish. And Dan Cornish has got the big advantage now of having another car between himself and Lisa Clark, his pursuer. And there you can see Dan Cornish in the 163 car then for Ferrari of Austin. P2 yesterday, like Cameron Root in Shell, and wants to go one step higher on the podium. And Lisa Clark, though, came with a fantastic overtake on Dan Cornish towards the end of the race yesterday. And now you can see Lisa Clark has been released and therefore can put the chase on to Dan Cornish. So Dan Cornish needs to get rid of those cars in front of him as quickly as possible. The next one in his target sights is that the 125 car of the Ferrari of Westlake driver Thor Haugen. And Dan will be very much aware of the fact that Lisa Clark is right behind now and barely 1.6 seconds behind. So Lisa will be putting the chase on, wants to make it 2 out of 2 this weekend, and richly deserves so. Very, very talented driver indeed. But so too is Dan Cornish. And you can see Dan is really trying to reel in the Thor Haugen car ahead, and needs to put that comfort cushion between himself and Lisa Clark if he possibly can. Bear in mind, we're only 6 minutes into this race. An awful lot can happen yet before we get to the checkered flag. And the action so far has been completely compelling. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So we pick up on some of the other drivers then running through this Ferrari Challenge pack of cars then, and some great stuff going on. And now we're following the 158 car of Bruce Cleveland. Bruce Cleveland driving very, very well, running in that P7 position. At the moment ahead of him is Naranjo, who we heard from earlier on, and right behind is John Viscup. And it's Lance Corley that is leading this little battle for 5th position. P5 for Lance Corley, P6 for William Naranjo, and Bruce Cleveland then running in that P7 position at the moment. Different trajectory on exit of that turn, as you can see there. Lance Corley, who's, in my opinion, qualified well and raced really, really well this weekend, and at the moment seems pretty comfortable in the position he is in, and not being put off at all by the fact that Naranjo is really, really pushing him behind. And that's the trick to it. If you can remain cool, calm and collected inside the car and not make any mistakes provoked by the pressure that you're under from the cars right behind, then that puts you into a very, very good position indeed. And there is Lance Corley, a very, very long-term competitor in the Ferrari Challenge, a truly, truly lovely guy. And Lance Corley doing a great job here in P5 at the moment, which, if memory serves me, and it fails a lot, is exactly where he finished in the race yesterday for Ferrari of Atlanta. Checking on my sheets here, and yes, that is precisely where he finished. So another P5 finish would be very good for Lance Corley, but of course he would prefer to be further up the order. And it's Jan Bernier that he needs to get on terms with, but Jan Bernier has got whoa as the 106 car goes round of William Naranjo, and that is just proof of the pudding that when you push and push and push, just sometimes you're absolutely on a knife edge. Look at the dust all over that car now, and he's going to come out right in front of Dan Cornish and Lisa Clark. However, he keeps out of the way, and I suspect it was just a little bit too much curb. And there you could see under braking, just losing the back end of the car through the dust, and of course it will be dusty. And well, he's chasing on Lance Corley. It's all over for the moment, so Lance Corley can breathe a small sigh of relief, I would suggest, although of course Bruce Cleveland and John Viscup are going to try and take advantage of that. There you can see the returning car back out once again. And so we continue. Now, I should mention that Cameron Root, incidentally, has extended his lead to 3.095 seconds. But let's keep with this lead battle, which is for the Coppa Shell AM drivers. And definitely, Lisa Clark and Dan Cornish. It's kind of a carbon copy of what we saw yesterday, but it was much later in the race that we saw this yesterday, where Dan Cornish and Lisa Clark were having a really good, firm, fraught, but fair fight between them. Now some dust has gone up there, which means a car has gone around, and we can see who that is that has gone around, and that is John Viscup. So John Viscup then has found the dust and the dirt and the grass, and now Lisa Clark is right on the bumper of Dan Cornish. Shay, this is shaping up to be something really brilliant.
It is, and as they come onto the front straight, sitting with her team, the Ferrari Beverly Hills dealership is willing Lisa on to try and make that pass. She set the fastest lap of the race for the class 2 laps ago, then cut down the deficit by 0.7 of a second. The last lap, Lisa Clark is hungry to get back to the front. She now knows what it's like to win a race on American soil. Having won in Italy last year, she wants that win. But Dan Cornish, the guy that she's chasing right now on the track, he got 4 podiums last year. never on the top step. He too wants this win desperately. It's going to be a dogfight to the end, Dave.
Isn't it? And it's so exciting. And the thing is here that Lisa has just shown the pace that she's got. We see some more dust. Maybe another car has just gone off there. But Lisa Clark has really narrowed that gap. And as Shea has said, set the fastest lap a couple of laps ago and has really narrowed that margin. And is virtually welding herself to the back of Dan Cornish here. Now, Dan will be wise to this, and he'll be driving a little bit defensively. And sometimes you can see when you drive defensively, maybe you make a mistake, a little bit of oversteer. Well, that was like a box of chocolates being handed to Lisa Clark by way of an invitation. They go side by side now on the back straight. Lisa Clark has got the inside line. Surely this is a done deal. I was about to say it could be a question of when, not if, that Lisa Clark will pounce. Well, with the greatest of respect, Lisa didn't have to work as hard today as she did yesterday in getting past Dan Cornish, because Dan really rather left the door open for her. Now, seeing those bollards that have been hit there, and Shea will be able to add to this, if you see the bollards knocked over, they are effectively a virtual wall onto the start-finish straight here. And yesterday, I'm pretty sure some drivers picked up time penalties for boshing bollards. Boshing bollards is not allowed, is it, Shea?
It is not, and it results in a 5-second time penalty. But that was actually the topic of conversation in today's drivers' meeting, because Manny Franco, a gentleman who participates in the Trofeo Pirelli category of racing, was asking what happens if a cone gets hit and then it's in the racing line. I don't want to go to caution for the cone getting hit. Todd Snyder, the race director's response was, well, I've asked the track to build about a 150-meter long concrete wall there, and no such luck as of yet. I think that would rather complicate the NASCAR situation when they come race here later in the month. But as a result, we have these cones, Dave, and it means that if you happen to hit one, you will be penalized 5 seconds, and potentially you're going to cause drama for the other people in the field as well. So let's just avoid the cones, shall we? That was the answer from race director.
Do you know what? Todd Snyder, the race director, has just got such a way with the drivers. He is hugely respected, and yeah, he can always add some humour into the discussion as well. We're watching now Ray Acosta in car number 107, who is running in P7 for Coppa Shell. Remind you that the yellow sun strip across the top of the windscreen means that you're watching a Shell driver. If it's a black strip across the top of the windscreen, it is a Shell AM driver. And Ray Acosta then ahead of the 133 car of Joe Dalton that we are seeing. And Ray Acosta at the moment is able to show a clean pair of heels to one Mr. Dalton. But how much longer is that going to stay that way? Where are we? 17 and a half minutes of the race remaining, and what a race it has been already so far. Cameron Root continues his quest. However, Cesniak, or whether Cameron Root has made a mistake, because the gap between P1 and P2, it was some 3 seconds. It's down to 1.693 now, so just noticing that from my timing screen, I wanted to bring that to you. So all of a sudden, that gap has narrowed somewhat. So we will keep an eye on that and see what happens. And, of course, chasing hard as well is Cyril Choksi, who is running P3 at the moment, but he's some way down on Cesniak and Cameron Root currently. And the thing is, for Cyril Choksi, for Ferrari of Denver, he has tasted the rich taste of success yesterday by taking the win. And at the moment, it is a podium place for Cyril Choksi, P3. But clearly, he doesn't seem to have the pace that Cesniak and Cameron Root has got ahead. So we will see how this develops, because there's still a long way to go in the race. And what is a critical point to make now is those drivers that did many more laps during qualifying and worked their tyres really hard in qualifying, they may not have the grip available to them come the end of the race. I know we're 16 minutes away from the end of the race, but look at this. Cesniak has really reeled in Cameron Root, like Cameron is on the end of his virtual fishing line here, because the gap is down to just over 1 second last time they crossed a timing loop. So we will keep an eye on here, because Cesniak, of course, started on pole position. He desperately wants this P1 position back. Cameron Root equally wants to keep hold of that P1. So we will see how this develops. It's a great fight that's going on in Coppa Shell, and of course the fight in Coppa Shell AM continues between Lisa Clark and Dan Cornish, where the gap is almost identical. It's just about a second. Here's Cameron Root then. Ron Tonkin, Gran Turismo driver, P2 yesterday. P1 is in the target sights today. And here we can see plenty more going on as Ray Acosta really is under some pressure now from Joe Dalton in the 133 car, and Joe Dalton getting a better exit there. He's going to have the inside line, but Ray Acosta may have a little bit more momentum, so they go pretty much side by side, heading onto the left-hander where they turn back into the infield section, and sure enough, Ray Acosta had got sufficient momentum, but of course he's got to scrub that speed now for this left-hander, and in fairness, he controls that absolutely perfectly and sees off the challenge that was coming immediately from Dalton. Dalton will have another go, have no fear of that, as a round has gone. The 195 car of Paul Lynn for Ferrari of Newport Beach. No harm done, however, and here we go. It's a duplicate copy once again, and now to the inside line, but again, brilliant driving from Ray Acosta, who has seen off that challenge. And of course, what Ray Acosta is doing here, he's actually pushing Dalton into really having to work his car and his tyres so hard. Now, at the moment, Dalton might be the quicker of the two, but it's all very well being quicker. You've got to find a way by, and Ray Dalton is protecting his track position, which he is well within his rights to do, as he puts the car into the middle of the track to get the optimum line. And that means, of course, that Dalton is taking more out of the tyres than perhaps Ray Acosta is. So there you can see just how hard Dalton is pushing, and Ray Acosta is very much aware of that. And of course, don't lose out or lose sight of the fact that Mike Luley is lurking behind as well, and he could very much become a factor in this as Ray Acosta. Well, I think it was the pressure that got to him, and just there was nothing that Dalton could do to avoid the just love tap there was between the two of them. And I just think that Ray Acosta probably had a little bit too much speed there. Let's get it in replay here. Here is Ray Acosta then being constantly pressured by Dalton, and there you can see his turn in was such that he just wasn't able to get the car pointing in the right direction. It back end lets go, and well, you can imagine as Dalton said, thanks very much, that really played into my hands. And that's often what happens when you're continually putting the pressure on the driver in front of you. Now, of course, Cesniak wants to do exactly that with Cameron Root. And this is the battle for P1 in Coppa Shell. And Cesniak has really narrowed that gap now to Cameron Root to less than a second. 8.5 tenths as near as makes no difference. So Cameron Root is going to be under pressure here. How is he going to be able to soak up that pressure? Going to be very interesting to watch. We've got 12 3/4 minutes of the race to come. Where has the time gone in this Coppa Shell race? The mix of Shell and Shell Am drivers, and the Ray Acosta car is still stricken, as you can see. It's in no harm's way, I would have suggested, out there. But nonetheless, he's not been able to get the car going again, so that's really disadvantageous to Ray Acosta. Potentially not even going to get a finish in this race. Cameron Root looking very lively going into that turn and wasn't quite as neat and tidy as Cesniak, who's altogether smoother here. Cesniak, of course, is in the gun seat because he's able to pile the pressure onto Cameron Root, and Cameron Root has got to try and absorb that like a sponge and not make any errors, because you can be assured that if he does make even the tiniest of errors and loses concentration for even a millisecond. We've got a full course yellow now, as if the racing action was not exciting enough. We now have the drama of a full course yellow to add into the mix of this Coppa Shell race, and it is brought about by the stricken 107 car of Ray Acosta, who race control have decided where that car is. It poses a potential problem, so we're going to get the safety car out. We go to a full course yellow, and that means that car is going to have to be recovered before we resume racing action. So we saw a full course yellow in the Coppa Shell race yesterday, and well, we've got another one today. Frank Cesniak and Cameron Root now are in a position, of course, where they are able to cool themselves and cool the tyres just for a moment, and that will also apply. Now, big beneficiaries here could be Cesniak, could be Cornish in both the Shell and the Shell Am categories, respectively, as we look at Bruce Cleveland here in the 158 car, who is running in P6. And Lance Corley is running in P5. That's the way it looks at the moment. Give you the rundown of the top 5 in each. It is Cameron Root, and then it's Cesniak, Chogsy, Bernier, and Corley for the Shell drivers. For the Am drivers, it's Clark, Cornish, and then it's Pereskoya, Nunberg, and Jerry Walters running P5. Very good drive from Jerry Walters in that beautiful pink 488 Challenge Evo. So there is Dan Cornish, then, who led, and a very good start, got the better of Lisa Clark, and then Lisa Clark coming back at Dan Cornish with benefiting perhaps a little bit from the mistake that Dan Cornish made. It allowed Dan allowed Lisa Clark to go through on Dan. Dan, however, would like to repay the compliment. I feel sure. I don't think it's going to be a long time in terms of getting the Ray Acosta car out of the way and for us to go back to racing again. Here is Lance Corley, then P5 at the moment, and here is Shea Adam, P1 always.
Aw, thank you. Well, for Lance Colley, coming into Homestead-Miami Speedway is a track that he has circled on his calendar for a couple of reasons. He and his wife Nancy stay down here. They live in Jupiter during the winters, as you would. Jupiter, Florida, a beautiful area of the United States. But coming into this weekend, he's got the confidence of having raced here twice before, the last time being in 2021, where he finished 4th and 3rd. So he did make it onto the podium here, and he knows where it is, just how good the champagne tastes after racing in a hot day in South Miami. So for Lance Colley, this weekend was something that he was excited about. Currently sitting in the 5th position, yesterday finishing P5. Now he's got 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st just in front of him. Can Lance Colley do it again? Well, we've got about 10 minutes to find out.
You're absolutely right, and those drivers are very much going to be in his target side. So the full course yellow and the safety car brought about by this. It's Ray Acosta then under pressure, as you can see from the car behind, and as he turns in, the back end of the car lets go, and he couldn't control that. Mike Lully didn't make contact, however, making contact, unfortunately, was Dalton. Couldn't really do anything about that, and I would suggest where that car ended up and the way the car looked in terms of its appearance there, that just a small component broken, which meant that the car would have to be recovered, which is why we have a full course yellow and the safety car is out there now. The big beneficiaries are the likes of all of those that are chasing podium places, because of course they are all much, much closer than potentially they were previously. However, the clock is ticking down as well. What it does for us as race fans is it provides still further excitement, because all of a sudden all the cars are going to be together again. It's like a race restart. Cheers very much. Love it. There is the 141 car of Jeff Nürnberg then. And Jeffrey Nürnberg running in P4 at the moment. So a podium is a definite possibility within class for him, because, and there you can see on the left-hand side the places that have been made up in the race overall by the drivers that you can see, and who's done what and who's won and who has lost. And great to take a moment to look at that, and some of the big winners there in terms of the race overall, the likes of Louis Perescoya and Dan Cornish and Lisa Clark, and some of the losers that you could see in orange as well. So there we are. There is the number 133 car. Now, it was the pressure that Joe Dalton was putting on Ray Acosta, but I feel sure caused the that or just something perhaps just a little bit iffy, but the Ray Acosta, just looking at the Dalton car, you can see how the door mirror is in a slightly different angle to that it started with. So there we are. These things happen, and this is Darren Bernstein in the 169 car now. Darren Bernstein, who is running P6 at the moment, with Dana Goodwin right behind, and it is Walters the next up the road, if you like, in terms of Darren Bernstein having well within his target sights the car of Walters. Potentially to move up the order. So 6.5 minutes remaining. The recovery, I suspect, is continuing, and hopefully we can go back to racing again. And what a fight to the finish it's going to be. It's going to be something of a dash for cash, that's for sure. So Cameron Root leading for Coppa Shell, Lisa Clark leading for Coppa Shell Am. And there you can see the cars, just one or two of them weaving from side to side. Now the reason for that is to maintain some temperature into the tyres. You would think with the temperatures that we have here in Homestead-Miami that maybe that was not so necessary, but just sometimes it is, although clearly the tarmac temperature is very, very much helping the cars in terms of maintenance of the temperature needed in those Pirellis. The number 100 car that we look at there of Anthony DiCarlo for Wide World Ferrari, and running in P8 in class at the moment, being advised that the safety car will come in at the end of this lap. So that means it is the responsibility of Cameron Root to control the pace of the restart. And Cameron Root, of course, will just want to get up the road and escape from the clutches and detentions of one Mr. Szczesniak, who's right behind as we go back to greens again. So here we go, and Cameron Root doing that restart really, really well. Did manage to gap Szczesniak very well, and Dan Cornish having done a similar job, but can hear some screams there as one or two cars that seemingly have gone around. Is that Jan Bernier, I believe? And another one going round as well. So couldn't quite pick up who that was, but I think it was Jan Bernier that went around. And it's William Naranjo has gone around as well. So there we are. That's what happens, you see, because the tyres have cooled down a little bit. So you go into those first sequence of turns full chat flat, but perhaps the grip available to you. Bearing in mind we're running towards the end of the race now, and the tyres have been worked really, really hard during the race. Maybe the grip that was expected just wasn't there. Now, Surreal Joxy is looking lively there in that P3. Let's take a look at that incident once again as all the cars come hustling through turn 1 and in towards turn number 2. And Jan just managed to, unfortunately, dip a wheel onto the grass, and that was enough just to upset the equilibrium and balance of the car. And subsequently, that went around. And it looked to me like Dan Cornish. Maybe also he managed to hold on to the car, but what that means is that Lisa Clark, Dan Cornish, that fight is going to resume, but Lisa Clark leading Dan Cornish right now, and Dan Cornish with just under 4 minutes of the race remaining to try and get on terms with Lisa Clark. Cameron Root doing a very good job. He's built 7.5 tenths already, but Szczesniak is still within pouncing distance and priming, but he is only got 3.5 minutes within which to make his move felt. Now, Szczesniak needs to do this before Surreal Joxy is on the back of Szczesniak, because all of a sudden then P2 could be under threat, and Szczesniak could not only be chasing the car in front, but also having to defend from the one behind as well. It's all closing up to be something of a really, really good finish to this race in Coppa Shell. So there you can see the difference between the two drivers. Szczesniak is quicker than Cameron Root, and there's Surreal Joxy coming into this. Lance Corley, of course, up to P4 as well. Shay said, desperate to have a podium here. And is he going to be able to do that? Well, you would rule nothing out because lots can happen still in the remaining 3 minutes of this race. And Lance Corley being chased down by Bruce Cleveland as well. So still lots and lots going on here. There's Mike Luley. But here is Dan Cornish now closing in on the back of Lisa Clark. Now, it was kind of a bit before this stage of the race yesterday when Lisa Clark was able to send it on the inside of Dan Cornish and take the race lead. Is Dan Cornish going to try and repay the favour and do the same on Lisa Clark? Well, in 2.5 minutes, we're going to find out whether he's been able to do that. I would suggest for the moment that Lisa Clark has got the race pace to be able to see off Dan Cornish for now. But we don't know. As the end of the race approaches, so too does the impetus to try and get the move made. But what you can ill afford to do is make a huge, huge error, and that would just benefit Louis Perescoya, who's running in P3 at the moment in class. So what a race, and Lisa Clark doing another good job. Is she going to be able to make it 2 out of 2 this weekend? Here, and this is Cameron Root, who for the moment seems to have seen off the challenge from Frank Szczesniak. It's the gap is up to 1.1 seconds now between P1 and P2, and it's very visible there that you can see P1, 2 and 3 they're pretty much gapped, and you can see Cameron Root on the last lap was about 5 tenths quicker than Szczesniak, so that's why the gap of course has increased, and therefore, Cameron Root just trying to build himself some form of comfort margin between the hard-charging Frank Szczesniak and also Surreal Joxy right behind. So just a minute and a half or so of the race remaining. This is the Ferrari Challenge from Homestead-Miami. What a race we're seeing from our Coppa Shell drivers. Really, really compelling and exciting stuff as we see another car go around. That's the 141 car of Jeffrey Nunberg that has made contact with the barriers. So Jeffrey Nunberg then finds himself on the grass, pointing in the wrong direction with just a little bit of damage to his 488 Challenge Evo. So Cameron Root then and Frank Szczesniak through the chicane, as we saw that Jeffrey Nunberg had gone around, and as they cross the timing line, it will be the last lap to come, and there you can see the white flag being flown loud and proud. as we go into the last lap of this race. Are we going to get the last lap away without any cautions? I suspect just a localized waved yellow will be enough for that stricken Jeff Nunberg car. So here comes Lisa Clark then. And Frank Szczesniak is, of course, right behind Cameron Root, and he really closed up on Cameron Root then. It knows he's got just the remainder of this lap to do it, and Lisa Clark is continuing to gap Dan Cornish sufficiently, but Szczesniak knows that he's going to try and push Cameron Root into making just the tiniest of errors now within the few turns that are left before the end of this race. And Frank Szczesniak, who qualified really, really well. Cameron Root, though, was absolutely determined right at the start of the race to move up from P2 to P1. It was P2 that he sealed yesterday. A brilliant performance from Cameron Root, it has to be said. And Frank Szczesniak really, really pushing him here. And onto the back straight they come, and then just the final part of the infield of the circuit to do before the checkered flag will await for one of these two. And who's it going to be? Well, Cameron Root has got to be tread very, very carefully here, because Szczesniak is closing up right now. He's welded to the back of Cameron Root. Cameron Root can ill afford to be even a millimetre out in terms of his trajectory of the car, but I think he seems to have it all completely under control as they head towards the checkered flag. Then this is Coppa Shell victory for Cameron Root ahead of Frank Szczesniak, who takes P2. Then it is Cyril Choksi, yesterday's winner, who takes P3. Absolutely brilliant racing. Here comes Lisa Clark to make it a 2 out of 2 this weekend in Homestead-Miami. Lisa Clark does take the win for Coppa Shell Am ahead of Dan Cornish, and then it will be Louis Perescoya, I think, that will take P3 in class for Coppa Shell Am. Wow, what a race. Well, just about everything to make it as dramatic as possible was thrown into the mix there. Really, really enjoyable, and well done to Cameron Root, who does move up one step on the podium in comparison to yesterday and takes the race win. Absolutely superb. And here he is then on his way on his cool down lap. Brilliant racing, really, really enjoyable, and well done to Lisa Clark, winner for Ferrari Beverly Hills in terms of Coppa Shell Am. Wow, awesome, absolutely awesome. Well done to all the drivers, because they have delivered some supreme racing for us during the course of that Coppa Shell race. And there we can see the Lisa Clark car, which once again has seen off the attentions of one Mr. Dean Cornish. But a terrific fight between the two of them, and really, really enjoyable to watch. So here comes the Cameron Root car then into the pit lane, and then of course to Parc Ferme, and he certainly didn't bow to the pressure that was being placed upon him by Szczesniak, and held on to it really, really well. A very, very polished performance indeed. And it was a brilliant and ambitious and bold move right at the start of the race to make that P1 spot his, and should take great credit for that, because it's always difficult going into the first sequence of turns here at Homestead-Miami. And let's get confirmation of the results then as we look down on high from our hospitality. Cameron Root taking the win from Frank Szczesniak and Cyril Choksi. Lance Corley taking P4 and Bruce Cleveland P5. Lisa Clark P6 overall, but P1 in class ahead of Matt Dalton and Mike Luley and Jan Bernier. Then it was Louis Perescoya, who of course takes P2 in Coppa Shell Am, and I can only assume therefore that Dan Cornish has been penalised perhaps for bollard boshing, because you can see there that Dan Cornish has been pushed down the order, so it's different to that I imagined, and that's great news for Louis Perescoya then, who moves up to P2. So P2 for Louis Perescoya, and that means that P3 for Jerry Walters in Coppa Shell Am. Wow. So that changes things just a little bit. And there you can see the Jerry Walters car, just as we were talking about it. So I can only assume, I haven't got the message on my screen, I can only assume that there's a time penalty that has been awarded to Dan Cornish for, as I say, potentially it might have been a bollard boshing move. So some very, very happy drivers then making their way to Parc Fermé. And congratulations being afforded all-round great camaraderie within the Ferrari Challenge paddock, which is always a joy to see, and makes it so enjoyable, of course, for all the drivers, but also for us race fans as well. So a bit of a queue into the Parc Fermé area right now. And just confirmation then of the results. Cameron Root, Szczesniak and Choksi, the top three in Shell drivers. Then for the Shell Am drivers, it is Lisa Clark, Louis Perescoya and Jerry Walters then. That takes P3. Cameron Root, well, did it all at the start, and he's with Shea Adam right now.
Ferrari Challenge. Second place yesterday, win today. How much fun was it out there?
It was a blast, just living out a childhood dream.
Is there anything better than coming and racing a Ferrari on a Sunday?
Racing a Saturday and a Sunday.
Are you going to be in this for the full season?
The full season, 100%.
Congratulations, and I hope you enjoy the chase to the champagne. Get used to it.
Thank you.
Well done to Cameron Root then. Absolutely in it for the full season, the long haul. Absolutely. There was no doubting that commitment. So, as both the Coppa Shell races are completed, here's the Drivers' Championship points. And Cameron Root leads the points by 2 over Cyril Choksi, then Frank Szczesniak. Lance Corley is P4 in the points. Then it's Jan Bernier, David Voronin, Bruce Cleveland, Matt Dalton, John Viscup, and Mike Luley. Then that's the way the points line up from our first event here. Well done to everyone that has banked points from the first weekend. It's never a given, of course, but they have done really well. And with Shea now, I'm sure, is a delighted Lisa Clark.
Yeah, and she had to work really hard for this victory. You're talking about points, so Lisa, let's start off with that. Championship lead pretty firmly after this weekend. How does that make you feel?
What a weekend. I mean, I didn't see this one coming, so I'll take it. No arguments, and had some really good battling with my buddy over there, Dan Cornish. Anyway, really, it was hot today. It was hotter today for sure than yesterday. So I think everyone's tires. I mean, people were spinning everywhere. So, but I was able to kind of manage through, eking through the slow turns to kind of keep them somewhat good. Yeah, so I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad the weekends worked out the way it did for me. Yeah, thank you.
2 wins, couldn't have been any better. Congrats.
Thank you. Thanks, Shay.
Well done, Lisa Clark. Richly deserved. Very good driving indeed. And banking a maximum haul from this weekend. Well done to Lisa Clark. And as Shay alluded there, here's confirmation that Lisa Clark is leading the points by 11 over Louis Perescoya. Then Dan Cornish, who's P3 in the points. Then it's Darren Bernstein and Jerry Walters. Dana Goodwin, James Camp, Neil Langberg and Jeffrey Nunberg. They are P7, 8, 9 respectively in the Drivers' Championship points. That's the way it looks. Homestead-Miami Speedway, Ferrari Challenge, Coppa Shell Race 2, done and dusted. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye for now.